All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to look a little bit more into the idea of masking. I showed you guys, about a week ago, I showed you guys, kind of a brief introduction of the magic wand and also the quick selection tool. We'll focus mostly on the quick selection tool of the two today. But what we're going to kind of focus on mostly is being able to mask well, okay? The goal when you are masking is that when you're selecting an image or you're trying to isolate an image, that you do it in a way that once you bring it into another image, that it actually looks real, okay? So once we actually start doing that, you'll get a little bit better understanding of what I mean. So as a part of, let's see, I think we're on exercise, where are we? Exercise 8. So a part of today's exercise is I am going to ask you to mask a total of 5 different objects, okay? So you will get to determine what that is. Ideally, it'll tell you to use some of the people that you took photographs of on the first day of class. So that's where those will kind of lend a hand. If you don't really like them, that's okay. I'm not going to hold you to making you using those images. To me, it's actually more important that you guys find the right images, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and throw out a curveball. I'm just going to assume that maybe you don't like your images, okay? So if you don't, and maybe you do, but if you don't, let's go over to one of my good old favorite sites, Creative Commons, okay? And let's find a couple good images that would work well for learning to mask, okay? And as you guys are selecting those images, you can have what I'd like you to have is a total of, let me just double check that I'm saying the right thing. I think it's 3 people, and the other 2 images can be, let's see, complete the process a total of 6 times. Okay, so you're going to do 3 people and 3 non-human items, okay? So I'll find some people on Creative Commons, and then also some non-human items. When I say non-human items, find images that you would actually want to place in another image, okay? So for example, a tree, plants, maybe a cow, a horse, something like that. Every semester I get a bunch of items that are just, I can't even understand why someone would want to mask that. Like someone would mask, I think last year masked a hammer. Why would you ever bring a hammer into another image? I don't know, maybe you would, but actually try to think of some good images that actually you would actually want to place in another image. Don't just mask any random object, okay? So let's go ahead and pick out a couple images that might work well, okay? So if we go to Creative Commons, we're gonna go ahead and search the Commons, and I'm gonna click on Flickr, no, and I'm gonna type in maybe person walking, okay? And as we look at these images, what we're going to want to think of is we're going to want to pick out what makes a good image, okay? So when you're looking, as a lot of these, look like good images, the first thing to pick is pick an image of a person, of a whole person, okay? Don't pick something like, for example, this, as cute as this little baby is, it's not going to work the best because one, it cuts off half of his body and it makes it very limited to what it is that you can do with that person. It really only works in the context that that particular image works in. So if you were to mask out this baby and put it in another image, you're really going to only be able to do exactly what you see here in this image. But something like this old man here is a little bit different. In fact, that would actually work really well because you can get the entire person and manipulate them into another scene. Another thing to pay attention to when you're selecting the right person to mask for a scene is the lighting, okay? So, and we'll actually, today we're gonna focus on the process of masking. Next class, we're gonna focus on the process of bringing those images into a scene, okay? But when you're looking at these images, pay attention to the lighting, both in the original image and the person that you're masking. Today, it's not super critical, but as we move forward, it will certainly become critical. So I'm gonna mask a total of 2 people today. Well, there's lots of cartoons and really some weird things on here. But I'm gonna pick 2 kind of difficult images. I'm gonna pick maybe just kind of a regular person. Let's do this old man here. And then I'm going to pick a person that's a little bit more difficult, maybe like a girl with some long hair, okay? This image will be fairly easy as there's nice crisp lines to the person's body and there's not a lot of things kind of wisping off of the person. So we'll do a total of 2 different images. Let's do this guy. So I'm going to click on download original. And then you can either go into Photoshop and go file open and load the image, or you could click on it, right click on it. So show in folder, right click and open with Photoshop. Okay, so now we have this image. So this could work pretty well in most images. Actually, the lighting is fairly, it's pretty good. It could be lightened or darkened fairly easy. There's not any strong, drastic shadows on the person's body or on the person's clothes. So that works pretty well. The first thing that I would do prior to starting the masking is I would use the crop tool and go ahead and crop out, a majority of the outside of the image, okay? Just so that you're not gonna battle all of that surrounding image as you guys start to crop, or as you guys start to mask. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna crop out a majority of the image so that all we have is just the person, okay? You'll notice that as you guys are masking, and this is something to pay attention to as you guys are selecting people, you'll have an easier time masking the person when you don't have a really complex background, okay? This is actually pretty good. The background doesn't have a lot going on. It's, and there's also a really nice transition between the background color and the color of what the person's wearing. As I mentioned when we were talking about masking a little bit, the way that Photoshop kind of makes the decision on what to mask and what not to mask is the color contrast between those 2 objects, okay? So this will be pretty easy because we have a really light background and we have a darker person in the foreground, okay? So the first thing that we're gonna do is we are going to right click on the background layer and we're gonna click on layer from background and hit OK. So this is no longer a locked layer, okay? You can also duplicate it if you want to as well. That works, that will work well. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and go over to our selection tool. So today we're going to focus on the quick selection tool right here. You can get a lot of the same results with the magic wand too, but we're going to focus on this one. Okay. So to start doing your selection, what we're going to do is we are going to hold down the shift key and we're going to start to drag our selection over the object that we are trying to select. So far this is working pretty well, because there's a clear contrast between the background and the foreground, okay? So it's working pretty well. I'm holding down shift and I'm gonna continue to select this fellow that we have here, okay? So I'm gonna keep going. I'm kind of hoping it okay, perfect. So I was hoping it was gonna mess up a little bit so I could show you how to handle the mess up. Okay, so we have something that looks like that. But so far the masking is going pretty well. I'd say it's like 90% done, but we have a couple little problems with it. If you hold down Alt and you go ahead and use your scroller on your little wheel on your mouse, you could zoom in. You'll likely have to do that. But as you guys start to mask, it's good to zoom in and start to kind of go along the edges of the person or object that you're trying to mask, and actually start to make sure you don't have little goof ups like this. Okay, we're gonna wanna fix that. So I'm actually gonna hold down the Alt button. Notice that this little selection right here goes from a plus to a minus when I hold down Alt. Okay, so when that goes to a minus, I could select on that little area and I can actually remove those little inconsistencies in the mask, okay? Always keep in mind, the better you mask and the more accurate you are at your masking, the more real your final image is going to look like. So take the time to get all the little details. Things like the shoe, we can kind of clean up that shoe a little bit. So again, I'm holding down Alt and I'm just going to click on the little areas where I want the mask to kind of backtrack a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. But we have a little bit more. We're going to want to actually add a little bit to our cane. So right now the size of my brush is a little bit too large. If I try to select this cane, it might work, but ultimately I want my brush to be smaller than the object that I'm trying to select. So I'm going to go up here, click on this little arrow, and I'm going to make the size of the brush maybe like 10. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hold down Shift again, and I could start to go through here and select the edge of that cane. Okay. Working pretty well. I'm going to use the Alt button. I'm just going to kind of deselect some of these objects. And I'm actually going to purposely leave a couple little inconsistencies because I'm going to that will help describe the next step. Okay? So let's fix, whoops. Let's fix this little area right here. So I'm going to hold down, I'm actually going to make my brush a little bit bigger again. And I'll hold down Alt, go ahead and deselect that. I'll deselect the area around his shoe. Okay, whoops, let's go ahead and reselect that. All right, that looks pretty good. So there's actually a little bit of editing that needs to happen here, but I'm actually going to do that in the next step. Okay, you could do it right now, but I'm going to show you the beauty of creating a layer mask. Okay. Oh, zooming in and zooming out. So what I'm doing is I'm holding down Alt and I'm just using the wheel on your mouse. Okay, so you can zoom in and out really, really easily. You can also hold down Alt and you can hit the plus. Oh, no, sorry, Control. You can hold down Control on your keyboard and you can hit the plus and minus tab on your keyboard. But I think the Alt and the wheel scroll is the much more fluid option. Okay. So now that we have our guy selected, the next step is going to be to create the layer mask. So if you go down here below where you see layer 0, you're going to see a little button here that looks like a camera. Okay, that little camera is going to be the Add Layer Mask button. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and we're going to notice that our entire background becomes transparent. Okay, so you don't actually have to go through and delete that. The reason why we use a layer mask and we don't just hit delete is because you never know when you're going to want to go back and maybe include a portion of the background, but it's always there. You can always go back and forth if you need to. Okay, so let's say you need to make a few more little adjustments to this. Okay, maybe you want to adjust some of that selection or go backwards a little bit. So right here, if you look in your layers tool, you're going to have your image and you're going to have your layer mask. Okay, we're going to leave the layer mask selected, and then from there I'm going to go over and I'm going to select the brush tool. Okay, I'm going to click on that brush tool and I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger so I can actually see it on my screen. Okay, that's probably good. Maybe we go 40. All right, and let's say, for example, down here, I've already created my layer mask, but I can actually see a few little inconsistencies in my image. Okay, so if I drop this into another image, one, I would see a little bit of fuzziness around the edge, and I would also still see a little bit of the background of my original image. So if you notice down here on your left toolbar, you have what you see as white and black. So with white being activated, white being the color that's on the top, if I go over here to my layer mask and I start to use my brush, sorry, flip-flop those, I'm going to flip that to black, and if I start to, actually let me go backwards. I'm going to go up here to my brush, I'm going to change the hardness from 0 to 100. Now let's look at the difference though, okay? Notice that as I started to use my brush, notice that it kind of looks like a spray can. Okay, that's because the hardness of the brush is at 0%. Okay, now if I change that all the way to 100 and I go back over here, notice that the edge of that brush is very crisp. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So with black activated, and if you just click on this little, arrow right here, it'll flip-flop those two colors. Okay. So I'm going to select black, and black will allow me to erase. It's going to appear as if it's erasing, even though it's just a mask. It's not really erasing. All right, but with black activated, I could go through and I could start to fine-tune these little edges, okay, like so. So I'm going to get rid of those last little areas that I kind of missed a little bit, maybe around his boot. Okay, The other reason why this is a little bit grainy is because the actual original image is not the greatest. It was a pretty high quality image, but it wasn't super high quality. You'll notice more graininess with your lower quality images, okay? So I'm gonna go through here and kind of fine tune these little inconsistencies. I can get rid of that, okay? I can clean up these edges just a little bit if they're really bad. I'm not gonna really worry too much about this, at least while I'm showing you, okay? But you can kind of see the point in that will start to clean up the edges where you may have goofed up a little bit. Now, oh, got a little bit more over here. So let's make my brush a little bit smaller. I can get in here now and really start to clean up that edge. Okay. Now let's say maybe I actually do something like this. Maybe I was kind of cleaning up my the boundary of my shoe and I accidentally, you know, maybe kind of goofed up like that. Well, you can always, of course I could hit Control Z and that would just go back. But if there's areas that you want to bring back to the image, all you got to do is go and change the color from black to white, and I can now start to bring portions of that image back. Okay, see how that works? So it's never gone. It's not like you're actually just hitting the delete button, but you can always bring the image back if you want to. So that's the difference between the black and the white brush with when the layer mask is activated. Okay, so again, I could go back to black, and I can go through and start to clean up that area should you need to do that.
How do you activate the layer mask?
So the layer mask is activated as soon as you have you're using your quick selection tool and you have the selection around the object that you want to mask. You're going to go down and you're going to click on the little button that has the camera, and that will create the mask. Okay, so everything that was not in the selection will go away, but ultimately it's just inside the mask. If you look at this little thumbnail right here, everything that's black is just hidden at that moment, and everything that's white is what you currently see on your screen. Okay, so I'll go through and just kind of, actually it's probably quicker for me to just go backwards. But any questions on creating the layer mask? Any questions at all? Okay, so let's do this again. Actually, really quickly, let me just get rid of that. Okay, so as soon as you're done with your first mask, okay, so as soon as you're done with your first mask, what you're going to want to do is you're going to go to File, Save As, and you're going to go ahead and save this as a PNG file. Okay, what that will do is it'll allow that file to retain that transparent background. Okay, so that if you drop it into another image, you're not going to get all the rest of the background of that image. Everything will be transparent, and it'll, you know, very seamlessly just insert right into an image. Okay, we'll talk more about that next class, but for now we're going to click on PNG. You're going to want to save this to your thumb drive. Oh, I took it out. I already have this on my thumb drive, but I'll go ahead and save it to my desktop for now. I'm going to go ahead and call this Old Man Walking Color. Okay, because a part of today's assignment is you're going to mask a total of 6 images, and of those 6 images, you're going to create a black and white version of all of them, and you're also going to create a shadow of 3 of them. Okay, and let's look at that process and how we would do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this as a PNG. I'll save this to my thumb drive, and I'll hit save, and then go ahead and hit OK. All right, and that's going to be what we want for that. So if we want to make this black and white, and you'll actually learn later on as we start to do renderings and we start to drop these into scenes why we actually chose to do that. But if we want to make that black and white, what would our process be to do that? Well, if we're going to go back, revert to the process that we did earlier in the semester, we would go over to our layer, we would add a new adjustment layer, and we're going to go over to color balance. Okay, I'm sorry, not color balance. Teaching the wrong thing. So we're going to go to layer, we're going to go over to new adjustment layer, and we are going to go over to channel mixer. Yep, thank you. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and click on monochrome. Okay, As you guys click on monochrome, I would encourage you to check out the different presets, okay, just so that you can get the right black and white image that you think works best, okay? So this one right here, it probably is not the best. You can see that it got very dark. So depending on the actual colors of the image, some will work well, some will not. Usually for dark images, ones with like an orange or yellow filter work the best. That's probably pretty close. I'll go ahead and pick that one. So from here, I'm going to save this as a PNG as well. Okay, so I'm going to go over to PNG. I'll save this as my desktop, and I'm going to go ahead and call this Old Man Walking Black and White. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I'm going to hit OK. And the last step of this process for our first image is we're going to create a gray silhouette of it. And the reason why we do that is we're going to use that silhouette later on in class to act as a shadow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, once I have the black and white image, and you actually don't have to have the black and white image prior to making the silhouette. Doesn't matter if it's color or black and white. We just happen to do this step prior. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to layer, and I'm going to go to new, and I'm going to add a new layer. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to make sure that layer is on the uppermost layer of my layers on the right side of my screen. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this to I want to say silhouette, but I'm having a blank. I'm probably going to spell silhouette wrong. I know there's an H, right? O-U-H-E-T-T-E. I'm an architecture major, not an English major, folks.
I thought it was,
All right, that's close enough. We all know it. We all know what it says. My dad's an English teacher, and he always helped write my papers when I was in school, and I always helped him do the math. Okay, so we have a layer for our silhouette, okay? And what we're going to do is we are going to click on that layer, and let's go ahead and hide our other two layers. So now you're going to see nothing. And with that silhouette layer created, I'm going to click on my brush tool, and I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to double click on the black layer. And if holding down Shift and double clicking on the fill layer, that will open up the color picker dialog box. So I'll do that one more time. So I'm going to select on the brush tool, hold down Shift, and I'm going to double click on the black box here. Okay, and that will open up my color picker background. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to select a nice kind of medium gray tone. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a 75% gray. To do that, you can go over to CMYK. The K stands for key. If you don't know that, cyan, magenta, yellow, and key. Key is just the same thing as black. I'm going to change CMY to all zeros, so 0, 0, 0, and then I'm going to change the K to 75%. Okay, you don't have to pick 75%, but that's a nice warm gray, not too soft, not too cold. So that works pretty well for shadows. Okay, so you'll see that this is the color here that I just typed in. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and I'm going to fill in the entire rectangle with that color. So I can change my brush size to something much bigger. That's really big. Holy cow. I could click one time and I got my gray. Okay. However you get the box gray doesn't matter to me. Okay. Oh, that's still pretty small. Okay. So you could do something like that. There's actually probably about 10 different ways that you can make this gray. Yes.
Why are we doing this one instead of taking our masked image and using brightness and contrast?
Because you're never going to get the exact color that you want. I believe me. You could do that. Like I said, there's many ways that you can do it, but I'm going to show you a little bit better way. Because if you use brightness and contrast, it's never going to just give you a perfect gradient, or I'm sorry, just a perfect color tone of the shadow. You'll actually still be able to see little silhouettes of your image. Believe me, I've done it. I've done that before. Okay, so as soon as you get the gray box, what you're going to do is you're going to hold down the Alt key. Actually, first select your move tool. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. I'm going to select the layer mask, hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to drag it up to my silhouette. Okay, notice that what we did was we just copied that layer mask that we just created. I dropped it on the color box that I just created, and it added the layer mask of the old man that I just created. Okay, so from there, once you have that, we're going to go ahead and save this again. So file, save as, and I'm going to go ahead and save this as a PNG. And I'll save it to my thumb drive, and we're going to call this Old Man Walking Gray. Okay? And I'll go ahead and save that and hit OK. So those are my 3 versions of one of my 6 images. So just to repeat, you're going to need to mask a total of 6 images. You only need to create a silhouette for just 3 of those. Okay? So the first one might take you a few minutes, but you'll get really quick at them, and really creating the other images will happen with just a couple snaps of the fingers. Okay? So any questions about those processes that we just did right there? Okay? So we're going to go ahead and call it quits with that image. Let's do one more. I want to do one that's a little bit more complicated. I'm going to find an image of a girl walking, someone that has some flowy hair, because that always becomes a more challenging image to mask. I gotta be careful because sometimes you'll get a kind of an interesting image pop up on Creative Commons. It's an art. It's a site for artists, so you never know what'll pop up. Let's type in girl walking. Okay, this is actually a good one. It's a good one in sense of the demonstration that I want to do, but not a good one that I can't see her feet. One time I accidentally typed in something, and right in front of the whole class, it was like 150 images of like naked zombies, and that's I don't know how it popped up, but it did. So that would actually be a challenging one because of the horse. But let's find one. Lots of good images, but I need a whole body. So really, I mean, you'll notice that as you guys are looking for your images, if you don't already have them, half of the process is just finding, maybe not half the process, a quarter of the process is just finding the right image. So don't be afraid to spend 5 minutes and find the correct image. She would be good if she wasn't halfway blurry. No bikinis. No firecrackers. I may just pick one that's not a whole body image. Let's type in, how about girl? Let's just say hiking. Oh, perfect. Let's pick this little gal here. All right, perfect. So there's some nice little wispiness to her hair. This will be a fairly challenging one to mask. So I'm going to go ahead and download this photo. I'll pick the original image size. And let's open in folder, and let's right click, and we're going to go to open with Photoshop. Okay, so we're going to go through the same process that we started with the old man. Okay, so I'm going to right click, layer from background, hit OK, and I'll use my quick selection tool. All right, and I'm going to go through and select the girl the best that I can, up to the point where I realize that I can't select the strands of hair. Okay, so let's get a little bit bigger magic wand. That should be good. And let's start to select her body. Okay, so I'm going to try to go pretty quickly. I think this is all pretty well understood. So again, I'm going to hold down the Alt button, and I could deselect the areas around her boot so that I don't also select that shadow. Ideally, I don't really want a little leaf in there, but that'll be okay for what we're doing. We could Photoshop it out if we wanted to later. Okay, so I'm going to deselect her boot. That looks pretty good. Hold down Shift, go back and finish selecting these other areas. Give me just a second to do that. So again, I'm holding down Shift, and I'm moving my mouse around over the part of the image that I'm trying to select. You know, what's actually kind of interesting, you're probably going to want to mask in the leaf as well, because she's actually holding it and she's playing with the little piece of the plant. So we're probably going to want to mask the plant as well. So I'm going to go ahead and try to select some of that. You're not going to be able to do it perfectly, but I'm going to show you a trick in just a second on how to select those kind of objects. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select her head and his hair the best that I can. Okay, so let's deselect this area in here. Okay, so that's pretty good. But ultimately, that's not going to be good enough. If I was to actually copy this and bring it into another image, it's not going to look right. You're going to notice a really crisp edge around her head. You're going to notice, the background of the image from this image that we're in our new image, and that's not going to work the greatest. Okay, so let me get rid of some of these little areas, and let's go ahead and learn how to actually make the selection around the girl's hair. So what I'm going to do, once we've got the rest of the image pretty well masked, I'm going to go up to this button up here that says Refine Edge. Okay, so we're going to click on Refine Edge, and you're going to notice that it masks out a majority of, it's going to mask out everything that wasn't selected. Okay, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go up to where it says View Mode, and we're going to pick the view mode that we want to use the most. Okay, they all do the same thing, but ultimately, so Marching Ants is going to be what we started with. Okay, so that's the Marching Ants selection mode. Overlay is actually the one that I like to use the best. The reason why is because everything that is not selected will appear as red, and everything that is within my selection will not have that red filter over it. So I can actually very clearly see what's not selected and or what is and what's not. Okay, so the next process that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn the radius to 1. Okay, I'm going to change that to 1. I'm going to change the smooth to 3, and I'm going to change the feather to 0.3. And what that actually does, now these are just numbers that I have found that work really, really well for this process. So 1 for radius, 3 for smooth, and 0.3 for feather. What that does is it actually kind of smooths out the selection tool. Okay, so if I was to kind of break it down, let's say your selection is kind of like, it's kind of like a little hairy like that, and it's not the smoothest selection. What it does is it actually, for you, is it'll round that out. So it'll make it a nice, clean, crisp selection around the image that you're doing versus kind of a jittery one. Okay, which is what we have now. You can see if you zoomed into these areas, you would see that it was a little jittery. Okay, so from here, as soon as I've changed the radius to 1, I've changed the smooth to 3 and the feather to 0.3, I'm going to go over and I'm going to change my brush to be a little bit bigger, so it's about that size. Okay, I can actually see my brush, and then from there, I'm going to go ahead and brush over the edges that we're trying to kind of clean up a little bit. Okay, you'll notice now, if I zoom in, notice that her hair is now a part of my selection. Okay, and if I go over, I'm going to continue to brush over those edges. Okay, it's going to think for a sec, and now the edges of that hair is selected. Okay, watch. If I go over here, I'm going to go ahead and select that edge. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, and now notice that it's actually selected in between those tiny little fine details in the girl's body. And so really good for areas like that. We'll clean that up. Notice how it, tighten it up really nice. Okay, so I'll go along the edge. Just kind of clean that up. Okay, go along that edge. And her boot. Right there. Right there. And I'm going to also go over the plant. Just kind of clean that up a little bit. And that should be pretty good. Majority of our plant should be selected now. And I'll finish by just selecting some of these parts of the hair. Okay, I'd say that looks pretty good. Okay, so as soon as I'm done, I'm sure I could probably spend a couple more minutes and refine it just a little bit more. But as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, and it's going to go ahead and refine the edge. You'll notice that the selection has kind of really gone out and selected all those little hairs. It's still going to look like it's missing a lot of them. Okay, don't worry about that. It can only put so many marching ants on the screen, but it actually is selecting everything that you just saw. So from there, I'm going to go down, I'm going to click on the layer mask button, and now you'll notice that you actually have all of those little things like the edges of her hair. And a lot of the times, and even our plant right there, a lot of the times those are the little things that are kind of the giveaway in the image once you merge them together. Okay, as you see little inconsistencies in the hair and a lot of the really fine details. Okay, and then from here, remember that we're on a mask. I could still clean this up a little bit, so I can go to my brush tool. I could change the size of the brush to much smaller. I can go through here and just clean that up a little bit. It's never the end of the world if you missed a few things. You always notice the things that you miss after you've applied the mask. All right, that's probably pretty good. Looks pretty good. Okay, any questions about that process? Yes.
If you wanted to fix some of the areas that made it transparent, like the inner boot, how would you do that?
Like right here.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit too transparent. You could go back to your layer mask right here. You could do the same thing as what you were just doing. So we're going to change this to white, and I could start to fill that in. Okay. So just because it appears as a gradient and appears like it's gone, it's all there. It's all there. It's just hiding behind the mask. Okay. Man in the mask. So I can go through there and I can kind of clean that up a little bit. Okay, looks pretty good. All right. So as soon as you're done with that, and as soon as you look at it and you think that it looks really good, you're going to go ahead and File, Save As, again as a PNG, and we're going to go ahead and save this to our title block. I'm going to call this Girl Sitting Color. Okay, and I'll go ahead and hit OK. And that'll save, and that'll be it. Any questions at all? Can I do any of those steps over again? Okay, we're good? All right, so once you create all of your images, you'll have a total of, what does it come out to? 6, 8, 12, you'll have 15 images, okay? So you're gonna have 6 images that you isolate. All 6 of those, you'll create a black and white version of them, okay? And then all 6 versions of those, let's see, what did I say? Black and white. Oh, no, that's not how many you'll have. Sorry, let's do the math real quick. So you'll have 6 color. There we go. So this is what you're going to put on your title block. Okay, so everyone created their title block. You're going to use that as the basis of where you'll put all your images when you're all done. So you'll open up your title block in InDesign. You're going to show your 6 original images. Wow, spelling is way off today. So you'll have your 6 original images. You'll have your 6 color masks, 6 black and white masks, and 3 gray images. So we have a total of 6 original, 6 color masks, 6 black and white, and 3 gray images. So 6, 12, 18. You'll actually have 21 objects. Okay, seems like a lot, but I promise you, you'll fly through all of them. Once you get the first mask, you create the color one like that. You create the silhouette like that. So it's really, really easy. Yes.
Your assignment doesn't do the.
Yeah.
Does it not add up like that?
Do the black and white or the color, one or the other.
Let's see. Let's take a look.
It says 6 color, 3 black and white, 3.
So we have, okay, let's do whatever it says on here. Sometimes I like to just change it up last second without anybody knowing or myself knowing. Let's see. So what do I have on here? Convert one of your images. Let's start at the top. So we're going to go ahead and ask you to do 5 people. Locate these images. So complete the process a total of 6 times. You should choose 3 people, 3 non-human pieces. This can include plants, trees, cars, etc. Convert one of your images to black. Okay, one of your images to black and white. Okay, yeah, so whatever it says on here is fine. So sorry, yes, I have too many images on there. But just make sure you place them all on your title block, okay? I can really quickly show you guys how to do that. Let me just, might as well leave it on here, just in case you need to show it. So I'm gonna open up InDesign real quick. I'm just waiting for InDesign to crash. It always crashes the first time I open it, for whatever reason. I have a copy of my title block from last class. So as this is opening up, you guys can go ahead and start doing your thing. Okay, so you guys would open up your title block, okay? I'm gonna open up, I don't think I know if I have a title block on here actually. I am gonna open up what I created last class. Okay, fine. I'll start a new document. You guys will open up your title block, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and just make this 11 by 17. We'll pretend there's a title block on there for now. Landscape, okay. So once you guys open up your title block, all right, we'll just pretend this is a title block down here. Okay, we'll add a little color to it. That'll be our title block. So from here, what you'll do is you'll go to File, Place, and I know a few of you guys are having trouble inserting images into InDesign, so I'll go through that process real quick. I'm gonna go to File, Place. I'll select my first image or my original image. Okay, I think I saved it on my desktop. Oh, it's probably in the downloads. Let's see, downloads. So the first image I did was the old man. So I'll click on the old man. I'll hit open, and I'm gonna go ahead and click. All right, this is a great example of where the image is like way too big for what we need. Okay, so the image comes in like that. It's way too big. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to make it the size that I want. So maybe it's about that size right there. Okay, I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to click on Fitting, and then I'm going to click on Fit Content to Frame, and it will readjust the picture to fit inside the new frame size that you just created. Okay, so that's going to be my original image. All right, so I'm going to place that over here. Maybe I get a little text and I call this original image. Okay, I'll place that right here, and then from there I'm going to go ahead and place my new images. So I'm going to go to File, Place, and go to where I have them stored. I have the old man color. I'll go ahead and hit open, and I'm going to go click, and I'm going to make him a little smaller too. So I'm going to hold down Shift, make him smaller, right click, Fitting, Fit Content to Frame. Still a little too big. Maybe I make him about this size. So Fitting, Content to Frame. That's good enough. I'll go ahead and do that. All right. All right, so then I'll do it one more time. So File, Place, I'll select my next image, which is the black and white. Open, I'm going to click. I'm going to hold down Shift, make the frame smaller. All right, so ideally I'm just going to make the frame the exact same size as the one that I just created. Okay, so I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Fitting, Fit Content to Frame. Okay. So So that's the color version. And then lastly, file place, my silhouette. Go through the same process. Okay, make it smaller. Remember, I'm holding down Shift to keep the proportion. Right click, fitting, fit content to frame. Okay, yes. Yep.
What does Control D do again?
Control D, usually it's deselect.
When you have like an image selected,
Huh?
and you hit Control D and you place another image in, does it fit it or does it just copy that image?
Say that one more time. I'm not following exactly what you're saying.
So I remember in Archie 120 we were taught Control D is not only place, but if you have like another image selected,
Mm-hmm.
and then so it's like it highlights the blue box, gives you the nine squares.
Yes. Okay. So yes,
then-
Control D is the shortcut for file place. If you do Control D, you'll be able to select your picture. But I think what you're trying to say, and we'll actually learn this process a little bit later on. But what I think you're trying to say is if you create a frame, you could place the image into the frame. Yes. So let's just say we'll actually do this again later. Let's say you select. Let's say you make a box like that. Okay. And you select that box. Control D, and let's say I put in. Let's find an original image. You won't need to do this right now, although I guess you could. What was it? Downloads. Select one of these images. Open. It will place it into that frame. And yes, you could right-click on that, fit content to frame. So yes, it's another way you could do it. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We're gonna, in about a week, once we start InDesign, the first lecture that we'll do is we'll actually learn what all of those little fitting options do, what the difference is between all of them. But for now, the process that I just showed you will work fine for what we need to do for these next couple assignments. Okay, so that might be what you have for your first image. I have my original image, I have my 3 that I created, and I will do the exact same thing below. Okay, any questions about that? So go ahead and get started. We still have an hour left of class. Use that time to work on this. Let me know if you have any questions. Help you out as much as I can. Yes?